We know Davey didn't like this, but we had to do it for his sake.
Let's put the fan in here.
Now, I don't remember if we had a support tray or not when this video was taken, and as you can tell, here he needed more support in his upper torso.
Feeling better? Would you like to sit in your stroller now?
This model goes from a stander to a seating chair, but we've never used it as a seat as there's simply just too much exposed metal to be safe. In my opinion, it's not something a Leschnian child like Davey with his level of self-harm should have even been using, as his propensity to bang his head and body on the metal is pretty severe. It took 3 or 4 people just to get him in and out of the stander and to keep him safe.
Remind me how to undo this and this button.
A is for Adam. A is for Africa. A is for astronaut. A is for acrobat. A says. You can see it right here. It was really funny when you did the I. Ready? Yeah, that's what he said. Betsy. B. Betsy. B. B says B. B is for bench. C is for
Davey Wicklin.
We did the horse and we did the H, ha ha ha. And so when he started doing for all others, he started going ha ha.
You can see now that he is wearing a lip guard. On extreme self-harm days, he manages to nip his lower lip despite having the acrylic bridge on his molars, which kept his bite open in the front. The biting cycle typically lasted about 2 weeks, and it happened every 2 months. So while waiting for that to stop, we added protection to his lips. I made a lip guard out of thermoplastic that moved with his lower jaw, and also made a hole for the drool to flow out at the bottom. It may look uncomfortable, but I actually made one for myself and tried it out first.
Davey Wicklin.
At this time, our family was all alone with Leschnian. There were no support groups, no doctors that fully understood the syndrome, so we had to figure it all out by ourselves.
Oh, C is for cowboy. C is for camel. C is for car. C is for collar.
Many Leschnian children have all their teeth removed, and it may have been the best thing for their safety. We even asked before why we didn't do that, and the reason is because we had other options for protection. And we wanted to do that until we had no other option.
D is for dog. D is for you gotta say dog.
You teach me right?
Oh.
Say it again. I'm gonna check you. I'm gonna something you. Tickle you. Is that how you punish Chris for not teaching you right? Come on, do your next letter. I see the letter D. Okay, Davey's a student today.
Davey has told us several times before that he wishes his hands worked like the way he wanted them to. Here, Davey has on homemade arm guards. Again, we knew nothing about arm splints. Aside from a therapist who told us about foot splints and AFOs before, no one ever mentioned anything about arm splints. So we just made our own. What is common knowledge for special needs families was alien to us then, as we had just entered the world of special needs. God opened our eyes to that with Davey's life. We were hoping the more he used his hands, the more control he would gradually have. We were pretty naive to think that OT and PT alone could solve his motor problems at that time, but we were hopeful. Davey went from an infant who didn't know how to open his fists or use his hands to play to a 5-year-old who was learning how to turn pages and grab a book. So for us, this was a huge improvement already. The concentration it took for him to touch these pages is not easily understood for those who have never been around a severe disability like Leschnyhan. By the age of 5, the self-injuries Davey displayed were typically head and back hyperextension, dystonic movements like hitting and kicking, and on and off lip and finger biting. That doesn't include the high anxiety that usually comes with having Leschnyhan, and how they also would say or do things that are opposite what they really want. Within a few years, it gradually got worse, and the self-injuries became more destructive instead of improving. We kept adding more protective gear as he got older. Despite the increasing physical problems, his cognitive and communication skills were growing at a typical rate. For our family, he was whole in the most important aspect. He could talk, he can tell us what he needed, what he felt. He knew he was loved, and he had a great sense of humor. He really has a great character. He is a really good kid and a very kind disposition. He just loves people, and he loves God.
Mommy, this isn't working. No, because he doesn't want to answer me because he doesn't want to talk about this.
He would tell us several times a day that he loved us and that he wishes God would protect us and keep us safe, and he prays that God would bless us. So, back to the topic of the stander. Was it beneficial or not for Davey? Well, in Davey's case, it's a no, and we would never consider using it again. Now, we did not know it at the time, but Davey's left hip socket was not growing properly, and it caused him a lot of pain. We did not even find this out until he had severe septic arthritis in his hip joint, and we went to get an x-ray, and he had an emergency surgery the very next day. Now, we would not have known otherwise how bad it would have been had we continued using the stander. The whole purpose of using the stander in the beginning was to strengthen his leg muscles and his joints, and also help with weight bearing. And little did we know, the stander itself was what was causing his body to be in pain. So his crying might not have been just from disliking therapy alone. The doctor wasn't quite sure whether or not his socket was like that from the very beginning, or it just eroded as time went on. But luckily we caught it, and sadly I wish we had caught it right before we started the stander. So it turns out that the painful septic arthritis was actually a blessing in disguise, because without it we would never have known to do the x-ray.
Look at the camera.